In October 1986, the quiet community of Brighton was shaken by an event that would remain unsolved for over 30 years. It began in Wild Park, a scenic woodland area where two young friends, Karen Hadaway, aged 9, and Nicola Fellows, aged 10, went to play and never returned home. The case, famously known as the Babes in the Wood mystery, became one of the most complex and frustrating investigations in British history. For decades, the families of the victims faced legal deadlocks and heartbreak, while the prime suspect, Russell Bishop, walked free due to ancient laws. This is a story of persistence, the evolution of forensic science, and a legal battle that eventually changed the face of British justice forever. Let's go deep into the well. On October 9, 1986, Karen Hadaway and Nicola Fellows were enjoying a typical afternoon in Brighton. They were best friends who lived in the same neighborhood and often played together in the nearby Wild Park, a large green space popular with local families. When they failed to return home for their evening meal, their families grew deeply concerned and contacted the local authorities. A massive search operation was launched immediately, involving hundreds of police officers and local volunteers who combed through the dense brush and steep hills of the park throughout the night. On October 10, the search ended in tragedy when a group of local boys discovered the two children in a secluded, wooded area of the park. The community was paralyzed by fear, realizing that a dangerous individual was hiding in their midst. The peaceful image of Brighton was shattered, and a high-stakes manhunt began to find the person responsible. The Sussex police launched a high-priority investigation, focusing on everyone who had been seen in the park on that Thursday afternoon. Within a short time, their attention turned to a local 20-year-old man named Russell Bishop. Bishop was an unemployed laborer who was known to frequent Wild Park and had been spotted in the area around the time the children went missing. During their search, investigators found a critical piece of evidence, a blue sweatshirt discarded near the scene of the crime. When they searched Bishop's home, they found a blue Ivy League sweatshirt that appeared to match the one found in the woods. Forensics at the time attempted to link fibers from the girl's clothing to this garment. However, in 1986, DNA technology was not yet available to provide the definitive proof needed for a certain conviction. Despite this, the police moved forward with the arrest, believing the circumstantial evidence was strong enough. The trial of Russell Bishop began in 1987 at Lewes Crown Court amidst massive public interest and intense media coverage. The prosecution presented the blue sweatshirt as the key evidence, arguing that the fibers found on it proved Bishop had been in direct contact with Karen and Nicola. The defense team was highly aggressive and successfully questioned the integrity of the forensic samples. They argued that the fibers could have been transferred through secondary contact and pointed out that there was no direct physical evidence, such as fingerprints, linking Bishop to the specific location. In a verdict that shocked the families and the entire police force, the jury found Russell Bishop not guilty. Under the British laws of that time, once a person was acquitted, they could never be tried for that same crime again. Bishop walked out of the courtroom a free man, leaving the families in a state of despair. While Russell Bishop was free, he did not stop his dangerous behavior. In 1990, only 3 years after his acquittal for the Wild Park case, he was involved in another serious event. He kidnapped a 7-year-old girl from a different part of Brighton and took her to the Devil's Dyke landmark, a deep valley in the hills outside the city. He abandoned her there after a violent confrontation, but fortunately, the young girl survived and was able to provide a detailed description of her attacker. This time, the evidence was overwhelming. Bishop was arrested, tried, and sentenced to life in prison for this new crime. Yet, because of the double jeopardy law, he still could not be punished for what happened to Karen and Nicola in 1986. For the next 2 decades, Bishop remained in prison for the 1990 attack, while the families of the two friends continued to fight for a way to reopen their own case. As the decades passed, the world of forensic science underwent a massive transformation. The development of ultra-sensitive DNA profiling allowed scientists to extract information from samples that were previously considered useless. In the early 2000s, a specialized cold case team decided to re-examine the evidence from the 1986 investigation. They realized that the blue sweatshirt and the original clothing samples from Karen and Nicola had been preserved in secure police storage for over 20 years. Modern techniques could now detect microscopic traces of skin cells and biological material that were invisible to scientists in the 80s. Experts spent hundreds of hours meticulously testing every square inch of the original fabric. They were looking for a breakthrough that could link Russell Bishop directly to the girls in a way that would be impossible for any defense lawyer to explain away as a simple coincidence. Even with the potential of new DNA evidence, the police faced a massive legal barrier, the double jeopardy law. For 800 years, this principle had protected individuals from being tried twice for the same offense. But the persistence of the families and high-profile public campaigns led to a historic change in the British justice system. In 2003, the Criminal Justice Act was passed by Parliament, which allowed the Court of Appeal to cancel an acquittal if fresh and compelling new evidence was discovered. This was a monumental shift that meant the Brighton mystery could potentially be reopened if the evidence was strong enough. The legal path was now open, but the police had to prove to the High Court that their new findings were definitive. The families of Karen and Nicola saw a real chance for justice for the first time in over 30 years. The forensic team finally achieved the breakthrough they had been working toward for years. Using a modern technique called DNA tapping, they found minute traces of DNA on the blue Ivy League sweatshirt that perfectly matched both Russell Bishop and the two victims. The probability of this DNA belonging to anyone else was calculated by experts to be 1 in 1 billion. Furthermore, they found microscopic paint fragments on the sweatshirt that matched the paint used at the crime scene in 1986. This was the fresh and compelling evidence the new law required. In 2017, the Court of Appeal reviewed the findings and made the historic decision to cancel Bishop's 1987 acquittal. This meant that Russell Bishop would have to stand trial again for the events of 3 decades ago. The investigation had finally produced a biological map of the crime that had been hidden for so long. In late 2018, 32 years after the event in Wild Park, Russell Bishop was brought to the Old Bailey in London for a second trial. This was a rare and historic moment in the British legal system. The families of Karen and Nicola, now decades older, attended court every single day. The prosecution presented the new DNA evidence, explaining how modern science could now prove what the 1987 jury could not see. Bishop's defense tried to argue that the evidence had been contaminated during the many years it spent in storage, but the police records proved that the items had been kept in sealed, tamper-proof bags since the beginning. The jury heard testimony from forensic experts who explained the 1 in 1 billion match and showed how the blue sweatshirt tied Bishop directly to the girls. The atmosphere in the courtroom was intense as the weight of 32 years of history came to a conclusion. After a trial that lasted several weeks, the jury reached a unanimous verdict on December 10, 2018. Russell Bishop was found guilty of the crimes against Karen Hadaway and Nicola Fellows. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 36 years. The judge noted that Bishop had shown no remorse and had spent decades evading justice. For the families, the verdict brought a sense of peace that had seemed impossible for over 3 decades. Russell Bishop remained in prison until his death from natural causes in early 2022. The case remains a landmark in legal history, proving that advancements in science and changes in law can eventually correct even the most frustrating failures of the past. Today, the Brighton case stands as a testament to the power of forensic evolution and the enduring strength of families who never stop searching for the truth. Don't forget. I will see you at the bottom of the well.